Many Indians have continued to express the thought long after independence. If only Patel had lived a little longer. Some, however, pertinently ask, could Patel have averted India's partition? Possibly yes, they believe. If Patel had held the reins of the Congress at the Simla Conference in 1945, been vice president in the interim government in 1946, and become India's first prime minister in 1947, Patel had told General Roy Butcher, Commander-in-Chief of Indian Army, that if he had sensed what tragedies would result from partition, he would have never agreed to it. Jayaprakash Narayan stated, if Sardar Patel, not Pandit Nehru, had been the first Prime Minister of India, maybe partition of the country could have been averted. Judging by Patel's past, JP's comment was not underestimate. Patel was confident of derailing Jinnah's bandwagon and preventing it from reaching its destination, Pakistan. At Karachi, in January 1946, Patel had nearly done that. The 1945 provincial elections results were for him most encouraging. Jinnah had failed to secure an absolute majority in the Sindh legislature. In a house of 60, the League had won 27 seats against Congress 22, and remaining 11 provided Patel maneuverability to gain the upper hand to form a non-league ministry. He had nearly succeeded. At such a crucial moment, Azad, as president, threw a spanner in the works by coming to Jinnah's rescue. Like Weber at the Simla's conference, by cancelling Patel's political assignments, unmindful of the consequences which paved the way for Pakistan creation. Allah Bakhsh, a leading politician from Sindh, who was to ink the deal with Jinnah, from Mumbai, Patel had pulled strings, and much to the astonishment of everyone, Allah Bakhsh backed out of the agreement. To a shocked Jinnah, he was in the hands of Congress party. For Jinnah, records Stanley Wolpert, it was a most bitter pill to swallow. He had labored long and hard for an independent province of Sindh. The Sardar had snatched this plum from Jinnah's lips just as he was about to sever its sweetness. For Patel, the situation in Punjab was no different. Premier Khazir Hayat Khan Tiwana, being anti-Jinnah, could have easily turned the situation in his favor. But because of Azad, Patel decided not to go to Punjab. The other two Muslim leaders in Sindh who mattered were G.M. Sayyid and Ghulam Hussain Hidayatullah. Both were close to Patel than to Jinnah. In defiance of Jinnah, Sayyid had demanded self-determination to establish a Sindhi Pakistan without interfering from the League High Command. Hidayatullah too was out of Jinnah's reach. He had proceeded on tour when Jinnah arrived at his residence to stay with him as his guest. Earlier in 1936, he had defied Jinnah by forming a Hindu-Muslim coalition. In 1946, he held out a promise to Patel that if made premier, he would not only accept Congress nomination but would help bury Pakistan in Karachi. This would have killed Jinnah's chances of having all-exclusive Muslim Pakistan. Hindu-Muslim unity was great to him. In his capacity as Congress President, Azad preferred a coalition with the League, following his preliminary talk with the Singh League President M.H. Ghazdar while travelling by plane to Karachi without Jinnah's prior consent. That was Patel's last maneuver. His failure was not at the hands of Jinnah, but Azad, his party president. Patel was, as Mountbatten recalled, a stern realist, one who, according to Vinoba Bhave, who knew no retreat. As a bold pragmatist, he changed his course of action to save India in two ways. First, by not letting Jinnah run away with the whole of Punjab and Bengal, together with Assam. Second, but not allowing British to create too many ulcers in India through independent confederations of princely states. His achievement lay in the prevention of the total balkanization of India. He wrote to Frank Maurice, a leading journalist, on 22 May 1947, "We are fighting with our backs to the wall against a mighty power armed to the teeth." And to G.S. Bosman, ICS, he wrote 11 July 1947, "I fully appreciate your reasons for disliking the decision to divide India. Frankly speaking, we all hate it." Sarojini Naidu told Sir Stafford Cripps, "When it came to getting things done, Patel was really effective leader for the Congress. Wavell could not have formed the interim government without Patel's support, which he had sought on his own. Mountbatten too depended on Patel in the expeditious division of assets and liabilities between India and Pakistan. This was most crucial. Without it, transfer of power could not have taken place on the due date, 15th August. Mountbatten thought of Patel as the one man I had regarded as a real statesman with both feet firmly on the ground and a man of honor whose word was his bond. Even Wavell admitted Patel is recognized tough of the Congress Working Committee and by far the most forcible character among them. I have a good deal more respect for him than most of the Congress leaders. Patel's toughness alone could have given the malevolent Jinnah the scheming British tough times and thereby possibly not letting the Congress suffer a humiliating defeat in its failure to avert partition of India. In the normal democratic process, Patel ought to have become the India's first Prime Minister. Patel ought to have become the first Prime Minister, but for Gandhi's uncalled for intervention in proposing Nehru's exclusive name for presidentship of Congress at the Working Committee meeting in November 1946. This was in spite of the fact that 12 out of 15 Pradesh Congress Committee members had supported Patel. 12 out of 15. None had favored Nehru. Gandhi's intervention tilted the scale in Nehru's favor. Congress General Secretary J.B. Kriplani later regretted. I sent a paper round proposing the name of Jawaharlal Nehru. It was certain that if Jawaharlal's name had not been proposed, the Sardar would have been elected as the president by virtue of that India's first Prime Minister. I have since wondered if the General Secretary I should have been instrumental in proposing Jawaharlal Nehru's name in deference to Gandhi's wishes, but who can forecast the future. On such seemingly trivial accidents depends the fate of men and even of nations. Whoever became the president of the Congress was to be the first India's Prime Minister. Patel was naturally much hurt in the final hour of freedom struggle, ending up in the transfer of power in 1947. Patel missed scaling the summit. Yet, as a disciplined congressman, he accepted Gandhi's decision and gave his country his best in the creation of a strong, united India, and took legitimate pride in saying, had anyone dreamt a year or two ago that the third of India would be integrated in this fashion, this was the first time in history after centuries that India can call itself an integrated whole in the real sense of the term. M.N. Roy's tribute to Patel was most deserving. When the future is bleak, one naturally turns to the past, and Sardar Patel can be proud of his past. What was Patel's past? As Gandhi often admitted, he was a pillar of strength to him in his satyagrahas, and a party leader who built party solidarity that even Subhash Chandra Bose could not shake. His creation of a single all India civil service ensured that the country's unity by binding together 28 states, and his integration of over 560 princely states created one India. He was the Chanakya and Bismarck at the same time, soft or stern, whichever the situation demanded, and whatever served the country's interest best. He scored over the latter in his bloodless revolution. He was by far from cunning, even ever truthful, gentle, and accommodating. What was Vallabhbhai? That has been answered briefly at the start of the book. Now it is in the end that may be elaborated in words of J.R.D. Tata. Vallabhbhai Patel was one of the person whom I felt most in tune and for whom I developed the greatest personal admiration and respect, while I was awed by his formidable political and administrative talents, the source of which was difficult to understand in a man of his background. One could not have but be enormously impressed by his clarity of mind, the simple good sense, and logic with which he addressed and solved seemingly intractable problems. While I usually came back from meeting Gandhiji's elated and inspired, but always skeptical, and from talks with Jawaharlal Nehru, fired with emotional zeal, but often confused and unconvinced. Meeting with Vallabhbhai were a great joy, from which I returned with renewed confidence in the future of our country. I have often thought, if fate had decreed that he, instead of Jawaharlal Nehru, would have been younger of the two, India would have followed a very different path and would have been in a better economic shape than it is today. This is what he said. Mr. J.R.D. Tata. He is not alone thinking like this. Many people even today think exactly the same way, that Sardar Patel would have been much better first Prime Minister and would have created a different country altogether.